Okay, a project for the day and part of the COVID-19 lockdown series of projects that I finally have some spare time to get around to these odds and ends that have been bugging me for a long time. In this case, for the little recording studio I have in my home, and I have a much larger YouTube video on that about my home laboratory and recording studio. But I have a little patch bay which connects the back ends of a lot of the equipment in my rack system, and right next to it is a Alesis multi-mix eight uh, 8 channel. It's really 16 channels because it's left and right channels for 8 different feeds. It's just a little one rack unit high mixer, and I decided to reorganize that so I'm doing less patching, since most of the work I do these days is either field recording and processing those recordings or converting old media for people to other media. And for that, I've got uh, quite a bit of different equipment, several different formats of open reel machines and DAT and PCM encoded uh, sources and old cassette machines and even a wire recorder that I can bring into the computer and do the editing and make CDs or MP3s or whatever for them. And oh yeah, there's a phonograph in there too. And the other thing I do is voiceover narration work for a few companies. That's when my voice is in semi-laryngitis mode like it is now. But anyway, I decided to clean this whole thing up, reorganize it, make it a little easier to use, more rational, and document it better so I'm not going around with a flashlight in the patch bay trying to figure out what's plugged into where. So that's what this project is about. I decided to start out by thoroughly documenting the new arrangement after I'd repatched everything and reorganized the patch bay and the channels in the mixer. And I came up with this card, which I laid out in my Serif Page Plus desktop publisher just because it's a handy piece of software for doing things like this. And I have the left and right channels grouped as rectangles and identified, and this is again for the patch bay, and there's a front view and a rear view depending on which way I'm looking at it. It's just mirror or flipped images of the same thing. And a couple of technical notes about other connections are on there. And it's set up as a tab pull format, which can be printed out on 11 by 17 paper. And I have the different types of signals color coded to help me group them mentally with a quick look. Using the same software, I made a much simpler card for the mixer, which just identifies each of the stereo channels by a picture of their main volume knob and a simple description of what I get on that channel. For projects like this where I have to print something out that's going to be getting a lot of wear and tear, and I don't want to absorb, finger oils from handling. I don't want it to tear easily. I don't want it to absorb moisture. I don't want it to wrinkle, etc. I've usually used the 3M print to last paper, but since that's discontinued and I have a limited stockpile of it, I was looking for alternatives, and I found this Avery product, their 60501, so-called Ultra Duty GHS chemical labels, which are adhesive backed, some sort of a laser printable plastic that's supposed to be non-absorbent and fairly dimensionally stable with changes in humidity and temperature, and also resistant to abrasion and chemical action. And I printed out the 2 templates onto that paper. Every time I have a pad of paper or a tablet with the cardboard backing and use up the paper in the tablet, I keep the cardboard back because it comes in useful for all sorts of projects. And here in this photo, I've peeled the protective backing off the two printed sheets of the Avery special paper and stuck it onto 11 by 17 sheets of cardboard. Now the bottom one I screwed up when I put it on, and it's got bubbles and wrinkles, so I had to redo that one. The card was then cut out so the tab is exposed, and that just fits on top of my mixer, slips in between it and the amplifier above it. The card is deep enough that even when it's pulled out, it's not going to fall out. There's still plenty of it back there supporting it, and that's what that looks like. Similarly, the card for the patch bay, which is larger, goes in, and as with the other one, it slips back, exposing only the tab when it's not needed, but it can be easily pulled out and referred to identify what's what on the patch bay. Now I should mention that the patch bay, which by the way is made by TIAC, and I've had this thing for, I don't know, 30 years or more. I'm sure more than 30 years. Definitely, no, probably at least 35, 36 years, I'm guessing. And it has little white strips, which are just part of the painted silk screen, but they're intended to be written on and easily erased. And for most of the time I've had this, I've just written on it with Sharpie markers, and then if I reorganize things, I'd get a Q-tip with some isopropyl alcohol and just wipe off the ones that needed to be rewritten. And but they tend to fade over time, even though it's supposedly indelible ink. It does tend to fade, and pretty soon I can't read them. And I think this pull-out card solution will be a big improvement to that.